on the right track because we saw a similar pain point where we're, obviously big Amazon users, AWS users, and we had a problem with not having the level of visibility that we needed into our cloud spend. And we built a tool very similar, not nearly as nice looking as what you presented, that gives us a view into the cloud spend. So what I'm curious about, actually, what I wanted to ask you, so to answer your question, we definitely would use it if we didn't have our own tool. I'm curious about, you mentioned the optimizer, and that sounds really interesting. What are the kinds of things that the optimizer looks at in order to give recommendations?
It depends on the service. So, we integrate across the whole spread. We don't just do infrastructure, we do platform and service. But for infrastructure, we're looking at, classic over-provisioning things. Are you running instances that are being underutilized? Are you running instances that just haven't been used for a while? Do you have storage that's not mounted? Or if you're looking at, say, Amazon, have you been running these instances for so long that you should convert them to reserved and therefore, find some savings in there? So we also have a great reserved instance tool that lets you get insight into those reservations and where they're going and when they expire and everything.
Oh, that's, yeah.
So how does your product work in a complex financial environment? For example, AT&T, we have multiple departments, right? We have for example, if we build a private cloud, right? We'll have finance department, HR, and consumer and enterprise. The different departments have different cost structure, right? Mm-hmm. How do you really manage the financial model, chargeback, and things like that using your product?
Yeah, I mean, some of our biggest customers are essentially doing that. They have internal cloud consultancies where they're trying to figure out to which department do we, allocate these costs. So, at the top level, we let you break things into departments. We're adding some more features around, tagging to let you say, this falls under this specific bucket, this should go here. It's really, across the board is something that, at the top level, we try and approach it from the cost point first so that it really fits into whatever sysadmin model you have. We're not really as focused on, giving everyone deeper insight at every level into this CPU usage and everything else, because what we're all about is, as I said, simplicity. Like making a tool that we could then, you can pass up to the CEO, you can pass to the financial people that they get. That's not going to overwhelm them with data.
Well, and I think it's almost, I think part of your question is really like, this can support providers and PaaSes and those types of things, but for people that are actually building things internally, is there an opportunity around using this for internal use?
For on-prem or private?
Well, yeah, because if you think about, the overall challenge is that most of us don't know what our IT spend actually does for our company.
Right.
I mean, and you see this very often where a CIO ends up now being stuck under the CFO of an organization, and where it's like, not just how do I allocate things between IT spend that I view as an investment versus IT spend that I view as a cost, and then
right.
How it gets sort of grouped out. And so it would almost be more like they need to provide an API and a data feed and these types of things that have to be pulled back into a traditional type of SAP system or something.
The OPEX and CAPEX model,
Totally.
It works totally different when we're talking about in a private cloud concept, right?
Right.
As opposed to a public cloud, right?
Well, if you notice, a few of the partners we have up there are definitely people who are doing the private cloud, people like Puppet Labs and Eucalyptus, where we're looking at ways that we can ingest more of that private cloud stuff and even give you some insight into, before you deploy something, should you be looking at on-prem, private, or public, and what the options are.
Will you actually install all of your stuff as its own instantiation on-prem?
The idea is to adapt existing agents, things like Puppet, et cetera, to do that. But that is definitely down the road.
But it still requires the data to leave site, go off somewhere else from a usage point of view.
And we do, to your earlier question, we also have an API for any of the data that we have, because as many of you probably know, none of these major providers, I don't know about Joyent, have an API for their billing and usage data. The only one that does is SoftLayer. So we can actually put back everything we've taken in to anybody to put in their own dashboards, own reporting systems, SAP, whatever you want.
Yeah, I already showed that page to your co-founder. It's there.
All right, great.
So what kind of APIs do you have available for, so you mentioned tagging. At Netflix, we built our own management tool on top of Amazon that puts our own metadata.
Do you have your own API?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
You can get anything that you see in the reports as a JSON feed. Works for everybody out of the box.
Okay. Is it only for getting data, or is it also for pushing data in?
Right now, it's just for getting data.
Okay.
But that's definitely on the roadmap to push data in, as well as.
For example, we have a concept of applications that Amazon doesn't have, and we use tags in order to label different instances and different services with our own notion of applications. So it'd be interesting for us, in the tool that we built ourselves, we segment our cost by application and then roll up applications to teams and so on. So in order to do that, we'd have to push that metadata
Right.
into.
Well, and potentially, if they're actually doing interesting analyses that your tool is not currently doing, you'd almost want to be able to push your data in just to get that
That's
to get
right.
that
Yeah,
analysis.
that's
And so,
exactly what I mean.
so you might very well sit down and you end up still having your internal tool, but you sit there and you can use this external one just for that type of thing.
So you said you have your product running with AWS and OpenStack and Rackspace, right? How long typically it takes to integrate your product with a new cloud provider?
It really depends on the provider. Obviously, somebody like AWS took a lot longer than somebody like a GitHub. But some of them are a matter of man hours, other man weeks. AWS took definitely a big chunk. But we're adding a bunch of new integrations. There's 112 total in the system to varying degrees, and we're adding another big chunk in the next month. So.
So on that, I mean, how deep can you actually go on any given? So you support a lot of cloud services, right? Like how deep can you actually go on any given service to provide, a real value beyond just like, the kind of the surface level?
Well, again, it depends on the provider. For the infrastructure guys, we're going a lot deeper, getting into, say, an instance level information about how long it's been running, what it costs, et cetera, getting into utilization around, how much it's been running and if it's been running for so long, et cetera. For other guys, obviously there isn't as much to get. GitHub, for example, it's just here's the plan cost, et cetera. We believe, though, that people are spreading out more and more on their cloud services. They're going to be using a lot of clouds, and ultimately, the first indicator for a problem is going to be cost. And you need to see that first at a high level. It's now a CIO, it's now a higher level person managing these things. So once they see there's a problem, then they can dig into the best tool for that particular application. And at any one point, the best of breed tool to manage something is going to be with that provider. So.
Right. No, and I mean, yeah, and it's not like most of these things are actually tend to be static budget allocations anyway. Then you go after the fact and say, how did you spend against it? So, I mean, for introducing any sort of dynamicism to this is interesting. I don't know. I mean, I actually liked it. Yeah, I mean,
Have you thought about using this as a
Group mechanism
rather
is
than
great.
looking at
Yeah,
historical
it's great.
data for kind of forecasting and looking forward and optimizing decisions on how to deploy new services?
Absolutely. And again, I'll point to some of the partnerships we have with there, people like Puppet Labs, how we can determine going forward before you deploy this thing, what it's going to cost, what you should be using, where it should be, and then ultimately modeling out different scenarios, both forward and back, of how you could have done it, and maximizing use like that.
well, and as a provider too, I would love to see a feature that shows relative cost amongst multiple providers and tells them that it's always cheaper on another.
We have a partner edition if you're interested.
That's the
So,
play model.
as a consumer of your product, right? Do you have any APIs that integrate with my financial systems? For example, I have accounting team, right? I have revenue assurance team, right? That uses certain tools to really get the reports out of different systems, right?
Right.
To do reconciliation and things like that, right?
Yep.
Does it have any out-of-box APIs that I can quickly integrate with?
Yeah, so anything that's in any of our reports or the email, you can pull via JSON feed. Any user, you just get an API token, you're good to go.
I just can't push in right now.
We're out of time.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.